As I walked down the dimly lit hallway towards my bedroom, I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease that crept up my spine. My heart was racing, my hands were trembling, and every hair on my body stood on end. I couldn't explain it, but something about that room filled me with dread. I had always been fascinated with dolls. Ever since I was a little girl, I had a huge collection of them, each one unique and special in its own way. But there was one doll in particular that had always caught my attention: the dreadful dollhouse. It was a beautiful Victorian-style dollhouse that was handed down to me by my late grandmother. It had intricate details, from the tiny windows to the delicate furniture inside. But what made it dreadful was the eerie feeling it gave off. It seemed to have a life of its own, as if the dolls inside were watching me. At first, I shrugged it off as my imagination playing tricks on me. But as the days went by, the feeling only grew stronger. I started noticing strange things happening around the house, like objects being moved or missing, and strange noises coming from the dollhouse. One night, as I was getting ready for bed, I heard a faint whisper coming from the dollhouse. I froze in fear, my heart pounding in my chest. I slowly approached the dollhouse and peered inside. To my horror, I saw the dolls moving on their own, their lifeless eyes following my every move. I wanted to run, to scream, but I was paralyzed with fear. Suddenly, one of the dolls, a porcelain ballerina, turned its head towards me and smiled. The smile sent shivers down my spine, and I knew I had to get out of there. I ran out of the room and locked the door behind me. I couldn't believe what had just happened. I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination, but deep down, I knew there was something sinister about that dollhouse. The next day, I decided to do some research on the dollhouse. I discovered that it was once owned by a wealthy family who had a daughter named Emily. Emily was a talented ballerina, but she was also known for her malicious and jealous nature. One night, she got into a fight with her parents, and in a fit of rage, she destroyed the dollhouse and all the dolls inside. It was said that her spirit still haunted the dollhouse, seeking revenge on anyone who entered. I couldn't believe what I was reading. It all made sense now. I had to get rid of that dollhouse before it was too late. But as I tried to move it, I felt a sharp pain in my hand. I looked down and saw that I had been cut by a tiny pair of scissors. I dropped the dollhouse and watched in horror as the dolls came to life and started moving towards me. I ran out of the room, screaming for help. My parents didn't believe me at first, but when they saw the dolls moving on their own, they knew I was telling the truth. We called a priest to bless the house, and the dollhouse was finally destroyed. From that day on, I never looked at dolls the same way again. The dread and fear that I felt in that room still haunts me, and I can't help but wonder if Emily's spirit still lingers, waiting for her next victim. The dreadful dollhouse will forever be etched in my memory as the most terrifying experience of my life. It was a dark and stormy night, the kind that makes you want to crawl under the covers and never come out. But I had to work late at the library, finishing up some last-minute tasks before the big renovation project the next day. The old building was already creepy enough, with its creaky floors and musty smell. But tonight, there was something different in the air, a feeling of unease that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. As I made my way through the stacks, shelving books and organizing papers, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I brushed it off as my imagination, telling myself I was just tired and spooked by the storm. But then, I heard a faint scratching sound coming from the wall behind me. I froze, my heart racing as I strained to listen. But there was nothing, just the sound of the rain pounding against the windows. I tried to shake off the fear and focus on my work, but the feeling of being watched only intensified. I could feel eyes on me, burning into my back. I turned around quickly, but there was no one there. I laughed nervously, chiding myself for being so jumpy. But then, I caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye, a shadow moving along the wall. I turned again, but there was nothing there. I told myself I was just seeing things, but deep down, I knew something was not right. I tried to ignore it and continued working, but then I heard a whisper. It was faint, but I could make out the words, "Help me." I looked around, but there was no one in sight. The voice seemed to be coming from behind the wall. Curiosity got the best of me, and I slowly made my way towards the sound. As I got closer, the scratching and whispering grew louder. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I reached out to touch the wall. That's when I saw them, eyes peering out from a small crack in the wall. They were bloodshot and filled with fear, staring right at me. I stumbled back, tripping over my own feet and falling to the ground. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Were these eyes real? I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I was paralyzed with fear, my mind racing with questions. Who was behind this wall? Why were they asking for help? And most importantly, how did they get there? I knew I had to get out of there, but my body wouldn't move. The eyes continued to watch me, following my every move. I could feel their presence, like a heavy weight on my shoulders, suffocating me. Finally, I mustered up the courage to run. I grabbed my bag and sprinted out of the library, not looking back until I was safely outside. I collapsed on the sidewalk, gasping for air and trying to make sense of what had just happened. I never returned to that library again. The next day, it was closed for renovations, and I heard rumors that the workers had found a hidden room behind the wall where the eyes had been. It was said that the room had been sealed off for years, and whoever had been trapped inside had died there. To this day, I still have nightmares about those eyes, and whenever I pass by that old library, I can feel them watching me, pleading for help, but I know better than to go back there. Some things are better left hidden behind the walls. I've always been fascinated by the witching hour, that eerie time between midnight and dawn when the veil between the living and the dead is at its thinnest. As a child, I would stay up late, listening to the whispers of the night, hoping to catch a glimpse of something supernatural. But I never expected those whispers to become my worst nightmare. It all started when I moved into my new apartment. It was an old building, with creaky floors and flickering lights. But I didn't mind, I loved the charm of it. Little did I know, the building had a dark history. It was said that a witch was burned at the stake on the very spot where my apartment now stood. At first, I didn't believe the rumors. But as the days went by, strange things started to happen. I would wake up in the middle of the night to find my belongings moved, as if someone had been in my apartment while I slept. I brushed it off as my imagination, but the whispers that filled the air every night made it hard to ignore. They were faint at first, but as the clock struck midnight, they grew louder and more urgent. It was as if the spirits were trying to communicate with me. I tried to ignore them, but they seemed to follow me everywhere. Even when I left my apartment, the whispers would follow, taunting and teasing me. I started to feel like I was losing my mind. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't focus, and the whispers were getting louder every night. I knew I had to do something about it, so I did some research on the history of my building. That's when I discovered the truth about the witching hour. Legend said that the witch who was burned at the stake had cursed the land before she died. She vowed to come back every night at the witching hour to torment the living. The only way to break the curse was to find her remains and give her a proper burial. I was skeptical at first, but I had to try something. So, armed with a flashlight and a shovel, I went to the basement of my building. It was the most eerie and unsettling place I had ever been. The whispers were loud and clear now, guiding me to a hidden chamber. I dug for what felt like hours until I uncovered a skeleton. As soon as I did, the whispers stopped. It was as if the spirits were at peace. I gave the skeleton a proper burial, and from that night on, the whispers of the witching hour were gone. I finally had peace, but I couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. Every now and then, I would catch a glimpse of a figure in the corner of my eye, but when I turned to look, there was no one there. I knew it was the witch, but she seemed to be at peace now, no longer seeking revenge. I learned my lesson. The witching hour may seem intriguing and mysterious, but it's not something to be taken lightly. It's a time when the dead roam freely, and they won't hesitate to make their presence known. So, if you ever hear the whispers of the witching hour, just remember, it's not worth it. Trust me, I learned the hard way.